Hello, Heather. I'm
Hello,
very
Joe.
much looking forward to talking to you today.
Me too.
I'm very pleased. For those of you listening, hopefully you don't hear Heather's little friend announcing themselves in the background. We've had to change locations in order to record this because there is a baby lamb who is sounding like that it was wanting a lot more attention than you were willing to give it before we
Yes.
started recording.
Yeah, we joke that my middle son went to boarding school and it was replaced with this very, much louder than my 15-year-old son ever was.
Oh, hilarious. Okay, well, Heather, I want to kick us off. Can you tell me who you are? Where are you from? And where are you based now?
Yes, Heather Pearce. I'm an occupational therapist and I'm based in Broken Hill, which is in remote New South Wales.
I know for all of you foreign listeners, Heather lives literally in outback Australia. So if you picture all of the pictures whenever you Google the outback, that's pretty much
That's us.
what Heather's backyard looks like. Do you want to do a bit of a picture for us? Like paint a bit of a picture of what your beautiful town looks like?
Yes, so it's right on the cusp of the South Australia border. We're a bit confused. We go on South Australian time and we have 08 numbers when we really should be in New South Wales, but we are logistically a lot more connected to South Australia. It's a very arid and dry environment, and the nearest, I guess, Mildura is 300 kilometres. Dubbo is 800 kilometres, which most of our medical services, the nearest in New South Wales, and then Adelaide's 500 kilometres.
Okay, so how far to Sydney, which is actually the capital of the state that
We
you are?
forget about Sydney.
I know.
Although I love Sydney, it's about 1,300 kilometres.
Okay, so to give our foreign listeners, particularly those from Europe who just are always constantly mind boggled by the distances that we talk in Australia, that gives you some idea.
Yeah, yes, it's quite a
Yes.
vast distance of red dirt.
Yeah, well, and that is also quite a different concept for our Singaporean listeners to get their head around as well. Is one, the distance, and two, the dry
Yes,
air.
yes, I know. It's welcome after a week in Singapore, but yeah, it is. It's very dry heat.
Very dry.
Which
Okay, so Heather, tell me, are you born and raised in that part of the world, or have you ended up there? I'm assuming, hearing that you're
yeah,
on this podcast, I'm assuming there's a bit of a story that's got you to Broken Hill.
there is actually. It's an interesting one. So I grew up in country South Australia, so in a small farming community called Lock. Sort of one of those towns that you go past and you're not sure if it was a town. It made you slow down, but there wasn't really much else to convince you that there were people that lived there. So when I was in year 8, I went to boarding school and then met my husband in final year of university, where I was studying occupational therapy. And after I finished university, I had a son quite quickly. Actually, I had a 2-year-old when I was 23, 24. And I'd always wanted to live overseas, and there were OT jobs in the UK. So my husband at the time didn't really want to go to the UK, but we had a bit of a deal that if he moved to the UK with me, then I'd move back to Broken Hill with him because he was from Broken Hill originally. So we only got 12 months in the UK, and I've been in Broken Hill for over 13 years now. And I guess the ironic bit is that we separated over 5 years ago, and I'm still in Broken Hill. So it's definitely got under my skin, and it's home now.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Okay.
I know. I know. Funny where you end up.
Okay, so take me. So you've been both the employed lead spouse, I guess, as well
Yeah.
as well as being the trailing spouse on the receiving end of things. So
Yes,
talk
exactly.
me
Yeah.
talk me through, because I guess those experiences that you had doing the convincing and the relocating of a rural Australian bloke to London. Talk me through what that
Yeah.
looked and like. What year are we talking? Like what sort of vintage are you guys at this stage? So you are 22?
I'm 22, so when I had Cameron, so it was 2005. So we went over with a 2-year-old, and we took a suitcase each. And Cameron went from a cot. We moved into this rental which had a double bed in it. And we still have to put this phone book so we could get into the cot. I look back and just think, wow, how do we do that? And it's I think what it gave me though was confidence. When I came back and I had any challenge, I'd be like, actually, this is nothing compared to that. That was really hard. Ryan, I guess, was I guess resistant because he hadn't really travelled or lived overseas. He grew up in Broken Hill, and he hadn't been in a non-breadwinner sort of role. He'd always been at work, and I'd been at home with our son. So it was a large change because I went into that full time. It was much easier for me to get a higher paying job being an OT than it was for him. He was a truck driver and didn't have his license over there to to enable him to drive trucks. So yeah, he went from breadwinner in Australia to being at home with a 2-year-old in London in the middle of winter. So I wouldn't say he loved it to start off with, and he only lasted 3 months before he said, I need a job. I can't do this. And then, we found childcare arrangements in London and negotiated shift work and, rosters. And it was probably the best year of our marriage, though, because we did things together and as a team. And, and Cam was is the most social, adaptable child. And I think some of that's just due to those we went trains through Europe and through Germany and Italy, and we had this little thing of games that we'd bring out each time, and you have to really, there's no choice but to engage with each other. So I think I look back at that and I feel really fortunate that we had those years, or that year.
That's amazing. Amazing. I sort of think it's a big enough deal packing up your bag when you finish university as a young, footloose, single, fancy free, I think about myself graduating uni and doing exactly the same thing, getting on a plane and going to London. But I didn't have a husband and a 2-year-old. That is an amazing thing and that one that you'd sort of, by the sounds of it, might have dragged a little bit, kicking and screaming with you as well.
Yeah. And I still, the things like, we wanted to go to Oktoberfest in Munich. So we did with Cameron in a pusher. And I just remember thinking, we have bad parents. Do they have the equivalent of facts over here? We shouldn't be doing this, but it was, I think.
Not at all. I disagree with you completely. I think that is absolutely fabulous. And it's so interesting when you think about that resilience that even those early years, that impact that has had on him. I think that's crazy. Crazy good.
And also us as parents, I think it really made you just grow up with your children, have adventures and spend time with them and, learn new things and have different experiences every day. Because you do that as a tourist. You go to somewhere new and you sort of really embrace all those things, whereas at home you don't do that all the time. So, we're very fortunate, I think.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay. I have so many questions. I feel like I need to have a conversation with your ex-husband as well to hear his side of the things.
Probably be very different to mine.
Oh, how funny. So tell me then, you, I feel, no offense, but I feel like you got the raw end of the stick getting 1 year in London and then ending up in Broken Hill.
Yeah, but Broken Hill has taught me so much too. So
talk me through. Okay, so it sort of, by the sounds of it, ended up probably a little sooner than you were wanting it to in the UK before you came home.
Yeah, the company I was working with, they would have sponsored me to stay over there, I guess, at the time. I'm not sure if it's still the same, but you needed to get a visa past the working holiday visa, and you need sponsorship from your employer, but you really had to commit for a decent chunk of time after that because they didn't want to go through that process just to have you leave again in another 6 months. So I think I was more keen on that than Ryan, and he was, I guess, keen to get back to Australia and buy a house and have a lawn to mow and all those things that Aussies do. So we headed back to Adelaide, and he had a family business, a transport company that went between Adelaide and Broken Hill, and he worked in that for a bit. I took a leadership role in a injury management sort of sector, and that was, I guess, we were there for about 1.5 years, and then his dad became unwell back in Broken Hill, and there was we should move back to be closer to help the family business because we'd be more help in Broken Hill. And I was just like, okay, well, it's what we need to do. And I said I'd do it, so let's do it. And I remember going for a job at the hospital, and because I'd had, it was different experience to your general OT, I guess, role. I went for a job, and they they gave it to someone who was 39 weeks pregnant, who was going on maternity leave the next week, and but then I sort of backfilled behind her role, and it was with children, so in pediatrics, an area I hadn't worked in before, but I loved it, and I was there probably, 2 years doing that role, and I didn't really feel I fitted in. Like, I was a bit of a square peg in a round hole in the public system. I was like, let's try this. That wasn't always that well received. Like, just thinking, I guess more broadly about some different ways of service provision and models of care. And I thought I probably just need to do this myself if I want to do it this way. So there was a random phone call where someone rang looking for does anyone do these OT assessments in the type of work that I've been doing in Adelaide and in the UK, and before I left to go overseas. And I said, yes, just ring this number after 5 p.m. and we'll talk. And that was really the start of me starting my own business. And then it has developed over the last 10 years into I employ 85 people, and it's, a comprehensive medical, allied health, NDIS and imaging service. So I don't think I would have had those opportunities if I hadn't have moved to Broken Hill.
Thank God. That's amazing.
It's great, a crazy ride. Yeah.
That's amazing. So all of those people are based in Broken Hill?
There are like 19,000 of us based in Broken Hill, but yeah.
All your 85 staff.
That's right. Yeah, sorry.
I'm not that
bad. Yeah, we have an imaging team, a medical team. Allied Health is probably our biggest, professional staff team, and then we have the NDIS team, where we have 4 houses for people with disabilities, where we provide 24-hour care.
Okay, so you want to give a quick explanation what the NDIS is for people that are not from Oz, that would not know what that is?
Of course, if you get in our acronym world, all these things that don't make any sense anywhere else. The NDIS is an insurance scheme for people with disabilities, and it provides, I guess, a funding for 3 different things. It provides funding for care, for allied health, and then also for, we call them consumables or assistive technology and home modification. So if you've got a disability which is lifelong and has a significant impact on your ability to do day-to-day tasks, then, there's more criteria than that, but that's generally what's covered in the NDIS.
And so it's federally funded. It's funded by our federal taxpayers, for those of you listening from abroad. Wowee. Okay, that just delves into a whole nother thing there. But I think it's so funny because so many of the stories that we share on this podcast are that expat experience, that where your ex-husband would have been more of my
Sorry.
I guess my guest as far as those sorts of things. But what has been really interesting is that the crowd that we get that listen to this podcast, who a lot of them are foreign and a lot of them are expats and things, a lot of the feedback that we get are the interviews. They really love the interviews where we interview people that have moved to really geographically isolated places in Australia, particularly those with medical trailing spouse things. So you're a little bit differently in that you're the medico, so it's a little bit different to that. But we have interviewed actually a fair few of medical trailing spouses who have moved around, not only through like the training periods of doctors and things where they're bouncing between all of their placements and those sorts of things, but also when they then get a posting somewhere and they're relocating more permanently. I would be really interested, just while we're talking on that, is that you're in this really unique position as the employer that I would assume faces challenges, i.e. recruitment challenges, when quite often the trailing spouse is the handbrake. So I would love to sort of delve into that a bit with you, because I know that it's a little bit off topic, but I think this is just such a really interesting challenge that a lot of organisations face globally around attracting and retaining talent into their organisation, whether it's in whatever industry and in whatever location, whether it's somewhere super appealing to, bring someone or a family to, or if it's somewhere that can be often quite challenging to attract talent to. How have you sort of, one, interacted with that challenge of the spouse being the roadblock to relocation? And I would love to sort of hear, is there ways that you've sort of incorporated the spouse into how you do recruiting or how you hold on to people that have been willing to move their family? And you, before we launch into that, are exhibit A of when, if you can make it right for the spouse, even if there is a relationship breakdown, that you stay on in the community. That's an amazing
I know, I'm
thing.
surprised there's anyone that I'm still here, but I sort of do love it too. So it has trapped me. But yeah, I guess, we do our strategic plan regularly, and, workforce retention and recruitment, or recruitment and retention comes up. It's the number one factor. And I guess what really frustrates me, and really why I'm here, is I think anywhere in remote or rural Australia deserves access to primary healthcare like the rest of Australia. So what stops that entirely is staffing usually. So I guess, in terms of trying to address that, what we need to do is think a bit differently, I think, to looking at those barriers. So a lot of the time we'll hear, okay, so the husband will come here for a job and then the wife won't be able to get childcare. So, they'll try for a period of time and then they'll have to relocate because they don't have that support system in place. Whereas, I guess something, and people probably think I'm a little bit crazy, but it worked, is, and I just backtracking slightly, my very first employee was a girl called Phoebe, who, after, too many drinks at the Palace one night, we decided that she should come and work with me. And the next day I'm like, should we do this? And she's like, yeah. Okay. So she was my first employee, and, so loyal and an amazing OT. And she fell in love with the Broken Hill guy. She'd be good to interview as well, actually. And she wasn't as much of a fan of Broken Hill, and she's like, I just need to get him out of here. So they moved to Wagga Wagga, which is a much, I guess, prettier town and closer to her family in Canberra. And her husband changed jobs, and he did his apprentice or a traineeship as a livestock agent with elders. And at the completion of it, they said, okay, that's great. Now you need to go back to Broken Hill. And Phoebe's like, no, I just got him out of there. And I was like, yes, I've got this huge wait list. You can come help me, Phoebe. Anyway, she came and she said, Heather, there's a 2-year wait for childcare. Like, I would love to help you, but I can't. But what am I supposed to do? And I said, that has got to be easier to fix than trying to find an OT. So my first son had gone to boarding school at this point, and I was like, well, my house is free during the day. So we turned my son's room into the nursery, and we started a childcare in my house, and found a lady who had looked after my kids when they were babies, and her son had just her daughter had just started at school. And I said, oh, what do you think? And she was like, oh, okay. And then poor Cammy came home and he's like, what have you done? I was like, oh, it's okay. It's we'll close it for the holidays. But it worked. And you know what? We recruited a clinical psychologist. We were up to 5 kids across 4 days a week within like 3 months. And they were all areas we couldn't recruit to. So,
my gosh.
I'm not saying every company should do that.
Heather for Prime Minister. I'm not even joking. Just solving Australia's workforce problems, one spare bedroom at a time.
But if you think about it logistically, and we've got an advisory board who are predominantly male, so they don't get what it's like when you are isolated with young children and you can't find solutions to these problems. I said, look at what we're paying locums who fly in. They don't know our community. They don't know. They don't know how our organisation works. They don't know the people. They don't know our patients. And they could be doing something, whereas I'm going to get it and I will do something completely different. And we're paying them an exorbitant amount, and we're paying the airfares and we're paying their accommodation. This is divide that childcare wage between 5 people, employees, and it's nothing compared to what you'd have to pay a locum. So I sort of explained it that way, and they came around to it, but it just
Oh,
took some
that
convincing.
is amazing. I love that so much. I love that so much. Okay, so that is really interesting when you have got the skills and things and people are able to. I love that you are like literally solving problems. What do you sort of see when you've got the challenge? So say if you're recruiting an occupational therapist and the spouse has now, because you've just built it yourself, access to childcare and things, but that
Yeah.
social side of things, because I think that that's another really big challenge. Like, I think that
Mm.
whole happy spouse, happy house thing is
Oh,
real. Like, it is, if you've got a miserable one or both parties, you can't retain them. They don't stick around. Is that something that you guys have sort of actively looked at
yeah. Actually, and hearing,
touching on?
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
actively worked on.
and hearing Kat's research, it was, and sorry, Dr. Kath Cosgrove, who looks a lot at that attract, stay, connect model, and that's what that connect part is all about. Like, what makes this person tick? What's going to make them want to come here and stay here? And that's so different to every person. So I think that's the key is just taking the effort, get to know them as a family. You know what, oh, you like playing soccer, or you like the quiz night on a Tuesday night, or we've just had a new grad OT, loves pole dancing. So we just installed, and I said on her contract, I was like, if you come and work with us, I will install a pole. And then she signed her contract. I'm like, where are we going to put those poles? So we've got
You
two
just put
poles.
it in the spare room where the kids are.
We've got it near the Pilates machines, actually. Same. But that, like, if you put a pole for, a mining guy, it wouldn't work. It has to be relevant to them and to what makes them want to be part of your community, I think.
Oh my God, I love that. Do you now have like pole dancing lessons as part
Well,
of
she's just
the?
doing it. Yeah, well, yes, I'm a bit dubious about saying this when you're affiliated with a medical practice, but they do have a very substantial core muscle development. Yeah,
I can
but
imagine.
she's doing a training course to become an instructor. So once she's finished that, she's going to start offering classes, which is awesome.
Amazing. Oh my
I
God,
know,
amazing.
so good.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Okay, I have completely got sidetracked, but that is
Sorry,
just
I do
absolute
that too.
gold. No, but I
Sorry.
think what a fantastic sort of insight into the challenges that employers who hire an individual who, heaven forbid, has another half and
Mm,
children quite often, that
yeah.
this is that challenge is not only the first attraction, so we will put a poll in for you to sign your contract, but how do you retain them, and like that
Mm,
pathways to finish your training and then offer like pole dancing classes outside of hours, like what a fabulous way to hold on to people. But I think that that's something that, like you said, it's not that every employer can do that for every spouse
no,
or whatever, but it's just such an interesting thing to do, especially when small business are doing this and you get to think outside the box. Like, it's such a
yeah.
fabulous thing to be able to do.
And I think I love that about small business. That's probably the bit that I love the most is you can be so creative and so innovative. And there's no one there to tell you if you've got a policy about this. And no, but I want to do it, so let's give it a crack. Like it's that, and that's like I really think I'd be a lot. I think corporate, that environment would be a much trickier environment to probably adopt some of the things that we have as a business. But I think that the principles of trying to really understand what makes you feel connected into a new place. And I remember moving here for the first time, and I'd go to the coffee shop and I'd have my daughter, and I didn't know anyone, and it's isolating. Like, and I think if you can remember that and go, well, how did I feel, and what would I have wanted when I first moved, that would go a long way for most employers, just to keep that in the back of their mind.
Mm. So tell
Mm.
me what that sort of first 6 to 12 months looked like when you'd moved. Like, you've had your stint away and then you'd had your stint back in the big smoke of Adelaide. But then what did that first relocation look like? What did that look like socially? And obviously you've talked a bit about it, what it looked like work-wise, but what was it like coming into a new town that you haven't spent time in before?
Yeah, hard. It was really hard. And I think Broken Hill once it's quite a transient, I guess, workforce. You have a lot of nurses and, police and education. And there's this us and them mentality a little bit that, why would I have my friends, why would I? And then once you've done your time here a little bit and they sort of, there's the trust, I think, once they trust you and once you trust them, people are so generous with their time and, welcoming you into their community and, finding ways to include you. It is inclusive. But those first 6 to 12 months, there's almost like a guard up in people that, I'll be friendly. It's a very friendly place, but it wasn't,
it was superficial, like it wasn't deep connection in any way.
No, exactly. That was spot on. That's exactly what it was. There wasn't a deep connection. But, things like I joined the mountain bike club and, the average age was about 75 and I remember going down this massive hill and got overtaken by one of these ladies and it, I was like, gee whiz, I hope I'm like you in another, 40 years time. But it made me like just do things that I hadn't really done before and that's good. Like it was good to sort of, I guess, challenge yourself when you move somewhere new to do things that you aren't comfortable with. But I guess that is how you feel for those first 6 to 12 months is uncomfortable because it's all new. And you don't have those familiar people that you just, can I come around for a coffee or I can't bother cooking, do you want to go to the pub? Like, those people in your life with the similar age kids, that takes a long time to establish that, or it did for me. But yeah, looking back now, I'm so grateful that I persisted past that first bit.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it's so different listening to you. Like I've recorded 2 podcast episodes back to back today, so it's so interesting listening to an expat experience and that of a domestic trailing spouse for someone. So obviously the challenges around visas and other things that are legalities around being a foreigner in a different country, you obviously weren't facing that because it was a domestic move within the country that you are a resident of and that you have a passport for and those things. So those challenges are different, but it's just so interesting hearing that those challenges that people face, regardless of where you're moving, you guys would have found them when you moved to London and then you find it again in a tiny town in the outback of Australia. I think that's just so fascinating to hear the similarities far outweigh the differences.
Yes, aren't they? And I guess it's just that newness, isn't it? And just breaking into new communities and finding out how they work and being patient with that process of, okay, so I have to go there to see that person about firewood or like things that should be an easy process sometimes aren't.
Agree. Yeah. And I think in a place, so Broken Hill's probably not a perfect example because like you said, it's such a transient community. And for those of you who haven't heard of Broken Hill, it's a big mining town. And so there's always a lot of, and it's quite a big, like I know you're saying there's 19,000 people, so people will laugh when I say that's a big place, but it's a big place for where it's geographically located, that you're a big centre for a lot of other people that live a lot further and a lot more isolated than the town itself. And I think why I was saying it's not maybe the best example because it does have a transient population of healthcare workers and educators and law enforcement and those sorts of things. So there are new people coming to town. But I think quite often when people will move to a place that is not set up for expats or set up for that transient community, that those challenges are even harder again because there's not that soft landing of people that have done this before. And there's not that sympathy that you're feeling, like when you look back and think about those early years and you then still remember that being raw. And so you're generous with your time and your network and your introductions and those sorts of things. But I wonder, do you think that towns like Broken Hill are doing a better job these days of creating almost like a bit of a a landing pad or a soft landing for people, like a place like Singapore, where, you know, this is such a transient expat community here, where you just sort of bowl in and there's a Facebook group for everything that you could imagine, and on how to find people, and people know that, oh gosh, I was in their spot 6 months ago, and so they're very generous, and you make friends down the street, and you're not actually having to feel like I've got to build trust in order to make friendships here. So do you think that towns like yours are doing a better job of helping people assimilate quicker?
Yeah, I think certainly with the day-to-day things, like, for example, if you're moving for one partner and then the other partner needs work. We've had that example. We've had an OT, and the partner's a metal fabricator. So I'm like, oh, which one? These are their contacts. Which one do you want me to find them a job with? So there's those, I guess, connections that you have when it's small, or not small, but smaller than Singapore, that you can, and that really nicely leads into someone feeling like that. I think that there is, that they are being looked after. If you can, there's a job. Oh, does anyone know of a rental here or a spare room? Or you can get those things sorted really informally. Football. Oh, actually, people don't have a choice when they come to Thrive. They have to play for South Football Club, because Mel almost gets it tattooed on everyone when they arrive. But that sort of, those connections, they go such a long way, I think, for people feeling like they're part of a community and part of a town.
Yeah, that's so true. And it doesn't need to be as formalized and structured when you're dealing with far less people, I guess, as well.
Yeah, and actually Kath talks a lot about that community connector model that they've, implemented in lots of the towns that she's worked with. And I think that's what Mel, who's like our operations manager, she's just born to do that informally. She's just, you'll just ask Mel, because she'll know all these things. So.
Okay, well, you've mentioned Kath twice now, so I feel like you need to, I will put a link into the show notes as far as Kath's website and the stuff that she does. But do you want to touch briefly on the sort of things that Kath does when we're talking about this attraction and retention piece, and this, what does it look like in building community and retaining people in communities and stuff?
Definitely. So I guess the interesting thing I found about Kath was she started her research, her PhD, in why people move to regional areas, and she ended up doing it on why people leave regional areas, because I think there was more data for that, unfortunately. And I think what she found was, if there wasn't someone that that you can see yourself finding a life partner there. So if there wasn't if you're that age where you're looking to settle down, if you didn't think you'd find them in that town, then they would move. If their children wouldn't have opportunities, then they would look to move. So, for example, if there wasn't if they were looking for private schools and they weren't available, then they would look to relocate at those times. And I guess what Kath does is looks at how, as a whole community, so not just one organisation, that community, but how as a collective group, how you can look to overcome some of these things and go across sectors, and it's not just thrive and healthcare. It's the whole the whole town looking at how we can make new people stay longer and feel more included. I'm sure there's more to research than that, but that was the take-home summary. Sorry, Kath, if I didn't do it justice.
We'll give you a shout out, Kath. People can have a look at your website if they're interested. But I think it's such an interesting concept, because I think that's something that we've really tried to look at, how, like, the Trailing Spouse Co, and what support that we can be giving organisations to actually start thinking about what the spouse's involvement when you're relocating or retaining someone in your organisation. Like, it's expensive recruiting. It's expensive. It's time consuming. It's onboarding someone, getting them through that first 6 months where they've then, like, passed all of the bits and pieces where you're like, yeah, we want to hold on to them. I think that I've seen and read research that says things around that if that spouse isn't feeling settled within that first 12 months, then your chances of holding on to the person reduces hugely. And if it doesn't if they don't leave, but what else can happen around relationship breakdown and family breakdown and all of those sorts of things that go with it. I think that it's very important for organisations to actually think about the family unit and whatever that comprises of when you're recruiting the individual to come and work in your organisation, regardless of the industry or where you are in the world doing that.
Yeah, because you look at, various stages of people's lives, and they're never just a worker. Like they're a mother, and they're a daughter of someone who might need, additional care, like I said, they're aging, or their their husband might be going through something. So I think we just need to be a lot more compassionate towards where people are at, and understanding of what support would they have, what do they need to make them feel like that this is the right job and culture for them to thrive in.
100%. And I think that this is the challenge that I think organisations of all sizes and all locations are starting to find, is that if you're moving someone physically for a role anywhere, like we can use both Broken Hill and Singapore as really perfect examples. So challenges to relocate someone physically to Broken Hill can involve the lack of housing. Again, you touched on the lack of childcare and access to that sort of support, lack of access to a potential job and way for that spouse to be involved in, I don't know, revenue generation for the family, but also to feel like they're still participating in the workforce and life. Those sorts of things are really similar in a place like Singapore, where you've got visa restrictions around, like a spouse is not allowed to work here. Like there's a blanket rule on you as a trailing spouse on a dependent pass, you can't work unless the spouse who is working earns a certain amount, and it's a lot of money, a minimum of $30,000 a month. Then you're allowed to get a pass to work, but someone still has to employ you. The cost of housing, again, is really challenging here as well to find places to live. And so all of those things that companies just assume you offer the job and the salary is the only sweetener that will get there. I think in a world now where so many families have got both spouses working and wanting to work, not even if they needing to, but wanting to work and wanting to get that sort of fulfillment around employment and career progression and all of those things. I think that it's so interesting when, imagine that if you sort of thought about the recruitment challenges of like a small business in Broken Hill and a global corporate in Singapore having similar challenges, blows my mind.
Crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Yeah. And I guess sorry, can you just recap? Was that $30,000 a month minimum? And then
to get another visa.
Sorry,
it's called a
can
one.
you just rewind that for me? And then you can work.
So you need to be on unless yours, okay, so for you to get permission to work as a trailing spouse here in Singapore, the working spouse needs to be earning at least $360,000 a year.
Wouldn't it be the opposite? So if you weren't earning as much, wouldn't it be better for the other person? How does that make any sense?
I think it's a very complicated thing. It's a way of ensuring that there is jobs for Singaporeans. Like it does make sense definitely on their end of things, but it makes it very challenging for companies that are trying to attract the skills and talent that they can't find in the Singaporean talent pool to bring it in from abroad. But it comes as a whole package now. So yes,
exactly.
It seems wild.
Oh, it does. Actually, and just I know, financial remuneration is very important. But if there's this lady, Avril Henry, I'm not sure if you've seen any of her research, but she looks at millennials in the workforce and what they're looking for going forward. And it's not just money. Like they want those, they want more flexibility with leave. They want different working hours. They want those things are on par with what people get paid now. So I think unless you're looking at those things as part of an overall package, then we're really stuck in the 1980s. We're not really reading what people want and need, I think, from their employer.
100%, and that's millennials. And then you've got the next wave coming after us that are wanting things completely different. They don't want a permanent job. They want to work in gig sorts of things, are happy to work part-time and live somewhere where it's more affordable, and they're quite happy, well, maybe not happy, but they're quite down with the fact that they might not own their own home, but if they can live best life and doing what they want to do, then being a renter is also not the worst thing in the world. And so many of those things seem at odds with a lot of how Australians definitely roll. It's so interesting actually interacting with a lot of Scandinavians in like my time abroad. They all think that we're mad, this focus and obsession on home ownership. Like,
that's what they do, don't they? That's so foreign to their culture, isn't it? It's very different.
Yeah, and so that's really interesting on an employer's point of view, and thinking about just how you need to do. You do actually genuinely need to make your recruitment a lot more personal and specialized to individuals to get the ones that you want in there.
Well, Sheridan's another good example. She was great, actually. She watched the RFDS series, which a lot of it was filmed in Broken Hill. And
acronyms, translate for people.
Sorry, I'm bad at that, aren't I? Royal Flying Doctor Service. So they provide an aeromedical retrieval service across all of remote Australia. And they do amazing.
Yes, a thing. So you fall off your motorbike or your horse or whatever in outback Australia, you are most likely to get picked up by the Royal Flying Doctor Service, who will come and land a plane and fly you into a hospital, say in Broken Hill.
Exactly.
So yes, and they have a show on TV, so you can watch the show. So that segue back into your story as you were, Heather.
Yes. You forget how much background stuff you need to explain, don't you? And especially with my brain. So yeah, the series had come out, the first series, and it showcased Broken Hill in all its beauty. And then I posted a job ad for an occupational therapist, and Sheridan had 5 years. Actually, she'll be one good one to interview too. 5 years of her own private practice in Nowra. She's probably longer than that. Very experienced, amazing therapist. And she just looked at it, 2 young children in starting primary school, and just went, I could do that for a couple of years. Like, I'll give that a try. And part of her thing was that she wants to travel when she's over here. She wants to see all of, like, as much of Australia as she can while she's out in the middle of nowhere. So every school holiday she has off the whole block. And we were just like, well, fantastic. There's, we're just so grateful to have you. Take as long as you want. So I think it just, I guess the old way of looking at it was, no, you've only got 4 weeks a year and that's all you can. Whereas I guess the way I look at it is how lucky are we to have, 10 weeks each term where we have Sheridan on the ground and her skills and what she can teach us all. So yeah, it's just, I think you need to flip it, really.
Oh my gosh. Like, not only like Heather for Prime Minister, but like Heather just to be everyone's boss. How fabulous.
Well, I don't know if they'd always say that, Joe. That's really kind of you.
But how amazing. Like, that's just yet another amazing story of like that, again, how you make it individual and bespoke for people and then it works.
And it does work. Like, our allied health recruitment has been so successful because we make it work. We want them to be part of our team to provide services based in Broken Hill. So, if that means you have to go home once a term, or throughout the year, instead of the 10 weeks, you have to go home for an extended block every 4 weeks for an extra 2 days, then so be it. If that's what you need to do to make it work, then that's what we'll do. So it's that, just being, I guess, a bit fluid in how we recruit.
So fabulous. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I want to actually come back onto a topic again because I keep getting sidetracked with how, like, I love that. I wonder if you could cast your mind back. Is there anything that you wish you'd known, or if you wish you'd done differently, or that you sort of were a bit more enlightened around when you made that first move as the trailer? When you moved to Broken Hill, that you think that retrospectively you wish you'd known?
I think I should have just mentally prepared myself for the region. And I say that because I grew up in a regional town, and I thought, hey, I know what the country's like. I'm used to that. And then I moved to Broken Hill, and mining towns, even though they're in the middle of nowhere, are very different to farming towns. And I think it's what I would have, just to not presume that my past experience was going to predict the future experience, because it was very different to how I anticipated it to be. And that wasn't a bad thing. It was just, I guess, not lower my expectation, but change my expectation was the advice I'd probably give to myself.
That's so interesting. I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice. Have you got now advice that you think that you would give to someone who is looking to do a move, whether it's to somewhere completely different to where they're currently living or abroad?
Yeah, I guess do it, because I think just challenging yourself out of that comfort zone, for personal growth, for career growth. When I look at people's resumes, I'm like, that would have been really hard. Like, look at all the places you've moved and look at how you've adapted and look at all your skills that you've grown and developed through these roles. So I think, that courage to go and do it doesn't go unnoticed. And I think that's really, really valuable on so many levels. I think the other thing is personally that putting yourself out there, which, I mean, I'm extroverted, and I probably find that easier than some people, but I'd imagine it's very daunting if you move to a new area and don't know people, and the thought of just rocking up to a mother's group, or the outdoor bowls, or the bike, like the cycling club, would be really, it's probably some people's worst nightmares. But I think in those communities you really have to, otherwise you're actually not going to break the ice, and you're not going to develop that trust and rapport which you need to get those connections.
Yeah, that's also great advice. I think I've talked to lots of introverts on the podcast, and they it is all types of hell.
It would be. And especially, because you think introvert extroverts, where you get your energy from, isn't it? It would be exhausting if those introverts I don't want to do that again today. Like, I did that yesterday, surely that's enough. But you'd have to do it continually, really, until you get those, find your people.
Yeah, very much so. Oh, Heather, I could talk to you all day. I'm going to wrap it up there.
Okay.
Look, if are you hiring from abroad? Is anyone with allied health experience that wants to move to outback New South Wales? Here's your gal.
Oh, www.thrivebed.com.au. Yeah. Come on down.
I will include the website in our show notes.
You.
This was definitely not a recruitment drive podcast, but
No,
I'm very.
I was joking. That was a joke.
Well, I'm not joking though, because I guess everything that you've just spoken about is just rings so true to the experience that so many people face. And I think that I don't know if you're listening to this as a small business owner as well. I think you've had some really, really interesting advice and experience to share as far as what it looks like getting bums on seats in a something like, with my other hat, that I'm a very big advocate for remote work and what that looks like and access to work and those sorts of things. But there are some things that people physically need to be there, and healthcare, for a lot of it, it's really good having someone there that's actually see, touch, feel.
Yeah, exactly. And just on that, sorry, I know we were wrapping up, but the right bum on the right seat.
Yeah.
So, and I've learnt that lesson as a small business owner, when you just recruit in haste and you don't get the right person for the culture of your organisation, that can be diabolical, which is probably the biggest lesson I've learned. But if you find the right person, all those things you'll just do. Or I found that, just thinking outside the box in terms of recruitment, pays you back tenfold.
I love it. Oh, it was so good talking to you, Heather. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.